Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. Before we get into it, I want to take a quick moment and just say thank you. This is episode 400. This is a moment. This is monumental. And if you had asked me a year and a half ago what I thought the show would have looked like, I couldn't even have fathomed that it would have gotten to the point where it's at already. And so I want to say thank you. If you've watched an episode, if you've listened to an episode, if you've been a guest, if you've been a part of something, you have made this really special for me. And really special for everybody. I can't even begin to tell you how inclusive the show has become, how expansive it's gotten to, and how much further it's going to go in 2024 and onwards. So I'm going to go ahead and let you get into the episode now because I don't want to make this a big, long, drawn-out thing. We have a really, really exciting one for you ahead. I mean, shout out to Dan Cable for coming on here. I want to just put that out there now. You saw it in the title, but I think this is a really special episode, and I'm really thankful to be able to bring it to y'all, and I'm very excited for what we have in store. I can't give a shout out to every individual, but to the over 200 plus people that have been on the show, thank you for your contribution, for your involvement, for being available and willing to come on the show or help with it in any way. To everybody who's done a Jambox Live or a Jambox Presents, thank you for your performances and for sharing your music with the world. And lastly, to you watching, to you listening, thank you. Thank you so much. This is all mostly for you. I mean, I do it for me because I enjoy this, but I'm really happy to be able to share this with the world and with everybody's audience who's been on the show and everybody who stays for all the ones thereafter. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get on into it. Jimmy's Jambox. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And with that being said, here's a quick word about our sponsor. Buddha's Berry, a delicate and earthy green tea. This blend of Roma, Krishna, and Vanatulsi is paired with organic blackberry leaf to create an inspiring tea that's a perfect morning ritual. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. All right, thank you all so much for watching again. Shout out The Brothers Apothecary. The holidays are over, but they're still here. Click the link below. Go get some. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hey, I'm Dan Cable.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, stoked to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I mean, everybody already saw the little opening bit, but this is episode 400. Super excited about that. So I just thought it'd be cool to get a like-minded individual on here and just really kind of dig into it a little bit.
Very rad.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about, what you do, where you're from, give us that Tinder profile of your experience.
Yeah, I am Dan Cable. I started the Dan Cable Presents podcast almost 8 years ago. It's a weekly music podcast based here in Portland, Oregon, and it's pretty spread out genre-wise, and I've started talking to people in the local open mic scene when I first moved to Portland, and always wanted to start a podcast and kind of messed around with a few before starting Dan Cable Presents, and started talking to open micers at first and just kind of evolved from there to talking to bigger and bigger bands playing the cool venues in town, to national touring bands and international bands. So
And were you playing in the open mic scenes as well? Did you come here and do music?
Yeah. When I first moved here, I was playing a lot of music at open mics. That was just something I was very determined to do when I first moved here. I played in a band in Southern California for a really long time. And when that ended, I got a little bit more serious about playing guitar myself because I was just singing in that band and I still wanted to figure out how to write and play songs. And so when I first got here, I was showing up to a lot of open mics. I was playing gigs here and there, and that is pretty much how I got exposed to the Portland music scene initially. was doing that.
I mean, that's a pretty smart way to kind of get into it. You know what I mean? You're going to meet a lot of people who are kind of in the same space of like wanting to create.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just like found there to be a really inviting, like welcoming community for it. Like it was just so cool. Like I'd never been a part of like a music community other than like my bandmates back in California, but we grew up in the suburbs and like an hour from LA, so we were always driving out there to go play shows. So we just like never really were able to be a part of a scene other than maybe like the few other bands that were playing around our town.
Yeah, or even like the few bands that you would go and play with when you went into town.
Yeah.
Still a small circle because you have to make so much extra effort just for the hang.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I was just like so blown away even by the open micers that I was seeing play music, the singer-songwriters that were showing up, like was just, I don't know, I was so inspired by it. And that's how I met like a lot of my early friends in the scene. And I was just like, I think that this could be a cool way to like spotlight people if I just talk to the folks that I'm meeting in these spaces. And then, like I said, it just like kind of evolved from there, where I was just like, now I'm talking to the band that's headlining the Doug Fir, like Mississippi Studios, and
hell yeah. No, that's actually that's similar to how I went at it with like the DIY scene, because same thing. There's just first of all, the open mic scene 8 years ago in Portland was incredible.
Yeah,
like that was something else completely. But now I think the DIY scene is kind of moving in a similar approach, where it's like everybody's just like, we can scale a music show of our own, you know what I mean? Like make this an actual thing.
Absolutely.
And just that there's so much like wanting to connect. And I think that's such a big part of it that's always been really present in this area.
Yeah, for sure. And I was like also fortunate that my cousin grew up in the Pacific Northwest up in Seattle. So he had a lot of friends playing music in the Portland music scene. Like, and that's how I got exposed to like the house shows happening in Portland and like house show fests and just seeing like these incredible bands in these dingy basements. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's especially it's cool to me how connected Seattle and Portland are as far as like willingness to interact musically without being like, we're the same. Like they still identify as different things, but the collaboration is strong because of the narrow amount of distance between the two.
For sure.
And like the willingness to travel.
Yeah.
It's really impressive how much Seattle people and Portland people are willing to go to either place frequently and just make the effort.
Yeah, and it just makes sense from like building like fans in those cities too. If you're like willing to swap shows with another band, and
exactly,
like each of them are putting in the effort to like build out a cool show for you when you come to that city. It's rad. Yeah,
hell yeah. Now, we have a few more foundation questions that I want to get through before we get into kind of the meat of how you do things now. So this first one, it's one we ask early, it's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite. What was one of the first albums you ever bought with your own money?
Oh man, I was thinking about that on the way over, listening to your show, and I think that it was maybe the Operation Ivy album, just like self-titled Operation Ivy album, or it was the No Doubt Tragic Kingdom record. It was one of those two that I bought with my own money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what gravitated you towards those?
I mean, the Green Day Dookie album was probably like the first tape/CD that just like was in constant rotation for me. So I think like that kind of definitely led me into some deeper punk rock stuff, like finding Operation Ivy, like led me to finding Rancid and the No Doubt thing. I grew up in Southern California, and Orange County was 20 minutes from where I grew up. So, and that's where No Doubt started. And like, there was so much music coming from that particular area.
Yeah.
That was on the radio at that time. So it was like No Doubt, The Offspring, Sublime, all that shit was happening like 20 minutes from where I grew up.
Yeah.
It was all being played on the radio constantly.
Wasn't it Treyu from Orange County as well?
Trey's from that area. I mean, Blink's from San Diego, but they played that area
that whole
a lot.
space.
And like one of my favorite bands is Thrice, and
hell yeah,
they're from Orange County. And so I think that was like part of the gravitation towards like knowing that No Doubt was, you know, happening that close, but also was playing on the radio constantly. And I was just super drawn to like punk and poppy stuff.
Yeah.
And that was like somewhere right in the middle of all that. So
that describes it really well.
Yeah.
And then what was one of the first live shows you ever went to? That was like one that you were like, I want to go see this, made it happen.
Oh man. Well, my parents, particularly my dad, was like a huge Phil Collins fan.
Okay.
And I grew up listening to whatever he was playing in the car, and I was like really drawn to it, and I would sing all of the Phil Collins words.
I was literally just talking today about like how Phil Collins is just incredible. It's a conversation that comes up maybe once a week. It's hard to avoid.
He's my favorite of all times.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
So although I did not pay for the tickets or like maybe even know that I wanted to go, because I showed interest and was, you know, caught on to the words, my parents took me to see Genesis when I was 5 years old.
Oh, shit.
At Dodger Stadium, which was amazing.
Okay.
And then they also took me to see Phil on his solo tour when I was 8. So that was like 93, 94. He put out Both Sides of the Story. So that was that tour. And that was at the Great Western Forum where the Lakers used to play. And so super fortunate to have gotten to go see those things early. I didn't know that it would stick with me so heavy. But I think the first concert that I really wanted to see, I saw Metallica when I was 12.
Okay.
At Lollapalooza 96.
Oh, shit.
And that was when Lollapalooza was still a touring festival, not just happening in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that was an insane lineup. Super grateful. I had a babysitter that was like my cool older sister. And she exposed me to Metallica when I was super young. And we happened to go to the water park that was in the same parking lot as what was called Irvine Meadows at that time, a big, large outdoor amphitheater. That's where Lollapalooza was happening. We went to the water park, and she was like, we finished up there, and she was like, we're going to try to see if we can get in and see Metallica, because they were headlining the thing.
Yeah.
So there was still probably an hour or two before they went on. She was able to get us tickets in the parking lot, and we saw Metallica that night.
Damn.
Soundgarden played right before them. I saw Chris Cornell play like a couple solo tunes by himself, and then Metallica went on, and that was it, man. Like, I wanted to like just be in a band. I was obsessed with Metallica.
Man, that would have been the best time. Yeah. That would have been one of the best times to see them live too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it was cool. I've seen them like a lot since then, and like I still think the live show is like pretty incredible. Yeah. But that was definitely like just a mind-blowing experience for my 12-year-old.
Yeah, man. And here I was thinking I was cool for seeing Ozfest at 16. Like, that's
still pretty rad.
Oh, it was. I mean, the headliners were Mudvayne, Black Label Society, Iron Maiden, and Ozzy. It just like,
that's amazing.
Oof. But that is awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like music has been very prominent from a really young age. Like, were both your parents musical, or is it mostly like were they just
neither
fans
of them
music?
Neither of them like played music.
Okay.
They were both just fans. I would say my dad was just like a bigger music head. Like it always blows me away when I talk with my dad about how many incredible bands and shows that he went to when he was growing up.
Yeah.
You know, he's just kind of like seeing everybody.
Did he go to them though when they were like not the incredible bands they are now? Like, or was he just always like on the up on like who had?
Like he saw the Stones in the heyday of the Stones and shit like that.
Hell yeah.
And then he like would continue to go to concerts when I was younger.
Yeah.
I feel like he was just constantly playing music really loud in the car.
Yep.
And my mom, the same, was always listening to music. But I think what I appreciated, like looking back on it, is that both of my parents were pretty open to letting me put the music that I wanted to listen to on in the car, which was
that's
really
huge.
rad. And I think like I put them on to stuff that they would eventually
Yeah.
Like, especially, like, my dad would always give me control over the stereo if we were heading to one of my hockey games.
Oh, yep. He knew.
We're gonna
Let
him do his thing. You know,
gotta
we're
get
gonna
in
let
your
him
zone.
get hyped.
Get in your zone. Hell yeah.
And he was open to it all. Like, I turned him on to some rap music that he would eventually like, and it was always pretty spread out genre wise from like what I was listening to. Like, I would like the saddest singer songwriter stuff to like the most gangster rap, you know, and the heavy, the metal and the punk, and
yeah, no, hell yeah. That's such an interesting concept, that like parents letting kids put on music early on, like letting them have a say in it, because that really creates a whole different value for it. That I'm going to sit with that after this episode. That's something I kind of want to dig into later. But also, because you brought it up, can we talk for a second about because this won't be, since we're not like approaching music directly,
right.
This is something I've been trying to find out from people when this comes up. But I want to talk about the similarities of things you experience from practicing and performing music, and the similarities between that and practicing and performing sports.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What were some of the correlative things that you found between the two?
You know, I think it's just understanding that, like, the discipline thing. Like, if you work at something, you will get better at it.
Okay.
When I got my first guitar, I hated that I could not just pick it up and play the songs. I put it down for like 5 years and didn't go back to it, because it was so frustrating to me to have no natural talent at it, where like,
especially when you loved music so much, and you're just like, this should just be coming out of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where like with sports, I feel like maybe even to this day that I could play any sport like recreationally.
Okay, so you just have the aptitude.
Just kind of like jump in and play. Maybe not like super well, but I feel like I can hang in any sort of like kind of pickup game. But yeah, I do really think it's just like seeing the results though in, you know, if you work at something, you will get better at it. And like, I had this conversation with my cousin, because he's like very much like sports minded and music minded. And he was just like, yeah, at an early age, I realized that if I just worked really hard on my technique for baseball, that like you would see those results like really quickly. And it's the same thing with the music thing, you know. You keep working at it and you see it. So I don't know if I like realized that at such a young age, but yeah, I think it's like, also, if you love to do something, then you're willing to work pretty hard at it too. So like, hockey was like always something I made time for, you know, like, and now with the podcast, it's the same thing. It's just like, oh, why have you been doing this for the last like 8 years? It's like, I love doing it. And now I feel like there's this crazy kind of challenge to it of how many weeks can I go straight without missing an episode, you know? And it's like wavered a couple times where maybe I'm a few days late, you know, because of like some
life
unforeseen circumstance. But I think it's just, I don't know. It's like, it almost like keeps you grounded in something too, when you have like something you feel like you're working on or like working towards, and like just to see how, when you like continue to chip away at something, like what it will kind of like reveal, like not only in the craft that you're working on, but like things that'll like reveal about yourself too.
Yeah. Hell yeah. It's weird. I feel like I give that narrative to a lot of people. It's strange to hear it coming out of somebody else, but I agree 100%. And thank you for going down that road. Like I said, when it comes up, it's always fun to just dig into a little bit. Eventually, I'm going to have somebody like skim through all the episodes and find all those segments.
Yeah.
Make a little thesis out of it. But let's go ahead and get back to you. We have one last foundation question before we dive into the present day. And this one's a little bit denser. But do you have a defining moment along the way where like you decided like this was the thing you wanted to do? Like where you went from like, all right, I've been doing this for a minute, to being like, oh, this is it?
Well, man, that's a good question. I mean, I definitely think that there's been a few like particular podcast conversations / episodes that have just like made me feel like I was doing the thing I should like keep doing for sure. But I guess it's creeping up on almost 3 years, which is hard to believe. Maybe like 2.5 years ago, I quit my day job to pursue doing the podcast and other music industry stuff full time.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty significant moment. That was a tough call in some ways, because I've never done anything in my life that has been unsafe financially, kind of thing. Like,
no, I get
I've had a job since I was 18, and from at least 23 to 35, I had pretty intense like management roles wherever I was working, and kind of spent most of my working career at 2 different places. So just like put in a lot of time at these 2 different places. But yeah, I'd been doing the podcast so long at that point, and I just like wanted to see what it would be like if I didn't have this full-time job attached to, my identity, and I could just like be free of it and just see like what that led to. So yeah, that's definitely been the biggest moment, like taking that leap and then seeing what's unfolded and the opportunities I've been able to like go after because of that.
Hell yeah.
Has been such a game changer, like so many times I've been maybe offered to go do this, and it's just like, no man, I can't go do that. I have a job. And now, at the drop of the hat, if someone's like, do you want to go on this tour managing gig for the next 3 weeks? Like, I can probably do that now and still do podcasting from the road or things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that is definitely a clear defining moment for sure. Hell yeah.
I just feel like, just so much cool stuff has happened because of that. And like, as soon as I did it, I feel like things started falling into place that reassured that decision,
Yeah. I mean, you gotta take the leap before you've leapt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. And I think I'd like put in enough time where I felt good about it too.
Yeah.
It wasn't this thing that I had been doing for a few months and then decided I'm going to go quit my job.
No. I mean, it's definitely, that's such a different moment in time, especially if you've been working nonstop for as long. But I mean, I guess, everybody's always like, oh, that's the goal. But like, to take the step is such a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's scary.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's cool that you were so solidified in the space surrounding it that, because like it sounds like you do many other things musically or in the world of music, so that you have now included your life into this thing that you also get to do something that you do regularly as part of your life.
Absolutely. Like everything that I do pretty much, even though sometimes it feels like even too much for me, I have signed up for all of it.
Yeah, you made the choice.
Yeah, most of the time I'm doing stuff that I absolutely love doing.
Yeah.
So
even if not at the time, the end result, you're just like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah. It makes it easy to want to put the time in. But yeah, it's not necessarily like it was something I thought about for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm so stoked that I took that leap, because it's just like led to so many cool things.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. But now let's go ahead and get into you in the present day. And this is one I ask everybody, so we're just going to get it out of the way. How did you pick the name?
Of the podcast? Mm-hmm. I just went with mine. My name is Dan Cable.
Oh,
I have never been asked so many times if my name is a stage name. I mean, my full name is Daniel, but I've been going by Dan for a really long time. But it is funny how often I have gotten asked. Like before I started the podcast, I'd never been asked.
Yeah,
like questioned if this was my real name.
Well, more of the time I ask that because it's the bands are like, oh, my name is Smelly Pizza.
Yeah,
like I need to know.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have felt rude if I didn't, but I was a little curious if Cable was your last name.
It is my last name. I don't know that if I knew that I was going to do this thing as long as I have, I may have not put my name in the title or put my dumb face all over everything.
I mean, it doesn't help that your last name is a very specific thing that's heavily used in this process.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I'm ready to go full in though and like start Dan Cable's cables. I need to like start my
I
own
support
XLR
that.
company or
I
something,
support that. I would switch over entirely to DCs. Yeah. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Now let's go ahead and let's get into it. Let's talk about the day to day. What is the experience like? And I mean, you feel free to share as much as you would or wouldn't like, but like, as much as you can from the beginning when you like have the idea to get somebody on the show. Like, how do you go about reach out? How do you go about organizing it? Like what are some of the things that happen there?
Well, as we were talking before we got rolling, it is a very DIY operation. So it's all me doing the booking, the hosting, the editing. It's all happening here. So it's pretty much just reaching out to people that I want to have on the show. I think I've like been pretty true to only having people on the podcast that I can genuinely say that I like their music. That's always been a big deal to me because I want the conversations to come across as genuine, and like I want to have hopefully interesting conversations or at least questions that feel like really geared towards each guest, and I want them to know that I have listened to their music quite a bit. Like I've spent a lot of time thinking about the questions I want to like ask them. So yeah, it's usually just shooting emails and seeing what happens, and it's definitely gotten easier as I have this roster of almost 400 guests. There's some repeats in there for sure, but it gets a little easier when you're shooting shots at maybe these big national touring bands or bands that have been on my bucket list, and I'm able to reference these other episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
Say,
like,
hey,
they've all been there.
Podcast, and because it's pretty multi-genre, it's covers kind of everything. I'm able to like throw out a handful of names, hopefully, like in each area. And I also have been working with like a few PR companies for the last 5 years or so because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah.
So there's a handful of PR companies that are sending me stuff on the daily, and I kind of, again, I only pick the stuff that really speaks to me. So that's been a really cool part of the journey, is just like building relationships with like particular PR agents that I've known now for so long, and whoever they're working with, they kind of trust me to jump on the mics with. So that's always like really nice to
when your reputation precedes you a little bit.
And it's just like not as big of a struggle to like maybe get some of these bigger names on that I'm trying to get on sometimes. And then once I know somebody's coming on, it's definitely listening to their music a lot, like going through the discography, trying to build questions through that listening experience. I always love to see a band live first if I can. If it's possible. I just think it like informs the conversation so much. And it'll change the way I approach the conversation a lot of the times. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes I don't get to see the live show first, but when I do, I'm always excited about like where it leads. So I definitely I spend a lot of hours listening and developing questions for these conversations, and try to make it a conversation, you know, and if they fire back with some questions, we can go that route too.
No, totally. Okay. And then once you have, all that kind of set up, you're good to go. After the interview happens, do you have like a general like timeline and expectation for like your editing process and like getting everything set up and turned around, or do you just kind of let it happen in the in between of your regular life?
It kind of depends. I try to make certain days editing days if possible. And if I'm ahead of the game enough and have some episodes banked, then that works out really well. But I have an episode that's going to come out tomorrow, and after this, I'm going to go back to my studio and I'm going to edit it
Oh, okay.
You know,
I've
so
definitely done that before.
Yeah, so it's like it really depends on what's going on, because you know the podcast is definitely a huge part of my day-to-day gig, and there is a decent amount of time to devote to that, but I also, you know, I'm doing
you've got a lot going on.
other things in the music industry, some artist management, some tour management stuff, especially being on the road sometimes can derail my production process. But yeah, ideally I set a couple days for editing so that I don't have to feel like I have to do it all in one sitting. I think it's nice to give the ears a rest sometimes.
No, I definitely feel that.
So trying to get better at that all of the time, but yeah, ideally there is some sort of like structure to it.
Oh yeah.
You know.
And then this one's a little more for me than I guess the general. Do you like edit and trim a lot of the space and like bring it a little more congruently and like talk over questions in between, or like similar to this? Is it just bell the buzzer, once you start you do not stop?
There's definitely like some editing done to the conversation. I try not to edit anything out if possible, but you know, sometimes questions don't always lead to like a great answer. And I have found over time that editing is good for the flow of the conversation. And when I first started, the mentality was much different. It was this very like punk rock, we hit record and whatever gets said gets left in, and we're gonna leave the big pauses if those happen, or you know, if people stumble over words, or you know, if questions don't really lead anywhere, or if we end up on some tangent that doesn't really feel like it has much legs, that all stays. And now since I started editing, I've just fallen in love with production and like what that can do. Like it used to be this very structured thing as far as the amount of music that was played in each episode, where I would pick 3 songs, like one to kick off the episode up top in the intro, and then I would pick one song to break up the conversation in the middle and one to play it out. And I just like felt like I was getting kind of limited by only getting to share like these 3 songs. Yeah. And then when I started editing, I kind of like I said, I fell in love with the production of like diving into the process where I could just bring this song in whenever it makes sense. Like if we're talking about a song,
just pop it up.
I can pop it in, and it just became so much fun. And I think it like just made the conversations flow better. Like sometimes there's weird breaks in between questions, and I think if you can remove those things, sometimes it'll make it more enjoyable for the listeners, you know. So the spirit of those things is definitely, or like the vision for that has shifted over time, but for the most part there's not much edited out, you know. Every once in a while there's a question or two, but I would say that even happens pretty rarely.
Okay, so you just kind of gotten comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But it's never like I always like to tell people that are new to the show, like when I'm talking to them, it's not a gotcha type show, exactly. You know? So I'm definitely never like manipulating the conversation in the editing. It's more for making it the most enjoyable listening experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
I mean, I say that hypocritically because these are all one takes for the most part, but I think it's because I kind of strive towards that approach as well. I'm like, I try to just keep a rhythm and a flow going so that it doesn't have to. And if periodically something has to get taken out, that's fine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just nice every once in a while, you know, you talk over someone, and sometimes it's like really easy to remove those things, and sometimes it's not, and I don't do it. But if it is, then I can, you know, pull myself out, pull my mic out of it. You know?
I guess in the realm of just audio as well, it's a little easier to make those edits.
Yes,
I guess
true.
I guess you know, being attached fully to video
component to it, so it makes it like a little more complicated. But yeah, doing the audio only thing.
No, but I like what you said specifically about bringing the music into the show, because that's something that I get a lot of narrative about. So it's kind of nice to hear somebody who has experienced that approach.
Yeah.
Because I'm always curious about like what can come with it, what comes from, especially on YouTube. I never know half the limitations that YouTube presents.
Yeah. I think if you keep it short enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, depending on what you're doing, you can put it in there. But I have, as like I think about transitioning over to maybe having more video elements to the podcast, I have thought about like what do those moments look like on YouTube when it's an instrumental break, and I think that will maybe change some things if it goes up on YouTube, and I'll have to think about those things a little more in depthly. But it's so cool to like bail on the part where I was having, you know, this kind of dedicated moment somewhere in the middle. It was never really like determined exactly, but I was, you know, carving out space to, all right, now we're going to listen to this song.
Yeah.
But it's so much more fun. And
just kind of bring it in.
Like even listening back while I'm editing and to actually like create moments that you didn't know would be there otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not always super intentional. Someone will just talk about something in particular, and it's like, hey, this is a good spot to bring in some music. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you for going through that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just like made it so much more fun for me.
No, I love that. And actually, now let's talk about some of the more fun experiences you have. As at least as far as like the editing goes, what are the parts you enjoy about the process?
I think it's like what I was just touching upon is creating moments with the music is rad. I'm also just, I think there's so much magic that can happen in editing that can make things feel a lot tighter at times, that it always kind of blows me away, maybe even with some of the episodes that I don't always maybe feel as strongly about.
Yeah, and then you listen to them in post and you're like, oh, wait.
Yeah. And then when I'm putting it together, I'm like, hey, it's still pretty solid.
Yeah. You know, you've been doing it a while. I think that not so much autopilot, but comfort.
Yeah.
You're comfortable in the process. And we're all just regular people. So sometimes we're going to be, you know, words can sound different in our head when they sound exactly the same out loud every time.
Yeah. I think it's been also cool being hands-on with the editing process is fun, because when you're hosting a conversation, as much as I always try to stay present in that, I'm sure you're familiar with this. You're trying to do your best to stay present, but you're also trying to guide a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're maybe thinking a little bit ahead while, you know, people are talking at you. And I think sometimes doing the editing is my first opportunity to really just listen.
Yep, 100%.
And I get so much out of that, and it like helps me maybe create my intros. While I'm editing, I'm always kind of like writing notes for what the intro is going to be of this conversation, kind of thing. So yeah.
Hell yeah. And then, oh, sorry, I didn't click the thing here in time. Do you have like an experience from the show that like stands out? I don't want to be that guy that's like, do you have a favorite episode?
Yeah.
Like, is there a moment where like the show just brought you this like extra joy that you would share with us?
Oh, I mean, there's honestly like so many episodes that I would say that a majority of them like really just kind of like fill my cup as a person. You know, I think there's a lot. I have a lot of anxiety going into conversations sometimes, and there's always like a part of me that is just waiting for the guest to cancel on me and almost hoping that they do sometimes. And every time I walk away from that experience, like wondering why I wanted that to not happen, and just feeling like so much joy. I think I've had Tobias Graves, who fronts the band Softkill, on a couple times, and have gotten to know him pretty well through those conversations.
Hell yeah.
They're still like landmark episodes for me. They're a couple of the conversations that I've gotten the most feedback on. I think mainly because the Soft Kill fans are just so diehard and supportive, and just seeing some of the comments come back from that one, like those two conversations were really special, just because I like that dude so much, and I just appreciate like his life experience is so interesting, and I just love, they've become one of my favorite bands in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think those two just really stick out as far as somebody that was so authentic and raw on the mics with me about their personal life experiences and what has contributed to making the music. Like, this dude, you know, has lived the life of being a criminal junkie for a lot of years, and like thankfully he's found a way to keep himself clean for a really long time now, and getting to talk with him about those experiences, especially like losing a really close friend to a heroin overdose, like getting to like talk to him and diving into the mind of an addict was just like incredible. Like it's those ones stick with me super heavy. Yeah.
Damn. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Soft Kill. I'm wearing my choke hoodie right now. Like,
hell yeah. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. But I would say, like, just in general too, it's I have made so many close friends from doing the podcast. Like, so many of my favorite musicians in the city of Portland are now like people I consider to be very close friends. And it's just another one of those things. Like, I showed up to do the thing, and because of it, I got like, I've been just like constantly rewarded, and it's changed like the trajectory of my life, like entirely, for sure.
Hell yeah. Man, that's incredible.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah. All right. And then to round out this middle portion.
Yeah.
This is a newer question, but it works the best at this particular time of year. But looking back from the beginning of 2023 to right now, how has your process changed over the year?
Oh, that is a good question. You know, I'm like been doing this so long that I'm always trying to figure out new ways to talk with people, and I think that I'm just constantly trying to listen to maybe other podcasts and like understand people's approaches. But as far as the process of things maybe changing, I think I've just gotten better, hopefully, at reaching out for help from people that are good on the technical side of things. I'm not an audio engineer. You know, I know enough around Logic to be able to edit my podcast and get it sounding good, or what I think sounds good, I guess. But there's been quite a few people that are way more savvy than me with the audio engineering that have helped me out with just little things like compression and helping me streamline my process. And I think, like, as far as, you know, how it's changed, I've hopefully gotten better at reaching out for help.
That, you know, that's such a big thing. I mean, yeah, I definitely know as well, but like that's useful information for sure.
Yeah.
Like that's such a big thing. And especially in a scene where everything is so collaborative.
Yeah.
Like people love to be a part of stuff.
And I feel like everything I'm doing audio wise is so simple that when I do ask these people, it's not.
Yeah. It's a no brainer. They're just like, of course. Yeah.
Task for me. But yeah, just, being willing to ask for help, in any facet of your life is a good move, I think. I'm trying to get better at it overall.
Yeah. No. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to some hypothetical questions.
All right.
And these are all, sky's the limits. They're all,
Sweet.
All the questions are made up and the answers are too.
All right, cool.
And for this first one, this is a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah.
But if you could interview anybody.
Yeah.
Like literally anybody.
Yeah.
Who would you want to interview?
It's Phil Collins for sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I had a feeling.
100%.
But yeah, that. Duh.
I think my time is passing. Phil's getting pretty old, and I know that he's not in.
He could just live forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He could just live forever.
But if I could even get 30 minutes with that dude, it would be absolutely incredible.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like a Mount Rushmore of the the bucket list folks, and Phil Collins will continue to sit atop of that.
Hell yeah. And then if you could do an interview anywhere, same rules apply. And it like, even if access doesn't make sense, it would be fine in this instance.
Yeah.
Where would you want to do it?
It's hard for me to not pick somewhere in Portland, Oregon, where I've made my home for the last like almost 11 years. Mm-hmm. And just, I feel probably more connected to this city than anywhere else that I've lived, for mostly the reasons that I'm just like pretty involved in the community here. Mm-hmm. I think it would be pretty rad to get to host an interview or facilitate some sort of conversation at somewhere like the Schnitz, the Arlene Schnitzer, just very classic, mm-hmm. incredibly designed theater, somewhere like that. I think that would be pretty rad.
Hell yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the setting. You know what I mean? Like anytime you can like make the space be like almost absurdly cooler than it should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like first tour in Seattle, we did it at 2 different venues, like all of the ones we did up there. And then the second time, first one was on a yacht. Second one was 5 interviews at a festival that was like, my backdrop was a river. And then the third one was on like the dock of a lake. And so like those kind of experiences definitely change things for sure.
I always like doing a green room podcast too. You just get to like see the insides,
mm-hmm. the space where they're hanging out.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. And then to round out the hypotheticals, because I mean, we run through these ones a little bit quicker in this setting. If you could get an album from anybody, you can get one more, they could be alive, they could be dead, mm-hmm. they could have put out 1 million albums yesterday, they could have never put out an album ever. But if you could get an album from anybody, who would you want an album from?
What do you mean by it? Just like
anybody?
Like them just giving me a record?
Let's say they put out an album tomorrow.
Okay.
I wish I could hear music from this person, and it could be like new. It could be of a certain time period.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, damn, it's hard to just not. I mean, it makes more sense. I feel like we gotta pick somebody that's not alive. Ooh. My favorite rapper of all time is Biggie. So I would have loved at least one more Biggie record. So I'll go that route because I feel like everybody else that I can think of right now put out such a significant catalog of music, mm-hmm. Thinking about, I thought Hendrix would be like another great one just to see where maybe Jimmy's mind would be at.
I was gonna say, you've literally said 2 of my most recent, like when I like chime in to you.
Yeah.
I said 2008 Biggie. Like if we could have got an album from him at that specific time, that would have just been the world for it. But yeah, that's
I love Biggie. So I think that would have been rad.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to go ahead. We're going to wrap it up. Can you tell us what you have coming up in the future? Do you have anything we can look forward to in like the first quarter of 2024?
I'm creeping up on 400 episodes myself, so I'm pretty pumped about that, and I'm really hoping that kind of marks a new era of the podcast, and hopefully incorporating more video content into the mix.
Oh yeah.
And I started DJing a couple years ago, so I'm doing that around town a little bit, so you can catch me DJing every once in a while. I'm pretty stoked for episode 400. My friend Eyal, who is an incredible musician in the Portland, Oregon area, plays under the name Saroon, mm-hmm. also has been hosting podcasts for the last couple of years, brought up the idea of me being interviewed for episode 400. So we're gonna do sort of a retrospective for that episode, which will be a change and shift in things. So pretty stoked about that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's exciting. All right, now for this next one, go ahead and look straight at the camera and tell everybody how they can find you.
Oh, you can find me most actively on Instagram at Dan Cable Presents. You can also find me on TikTok every once in a while making some tuna boy videos. I love tuna fish sandwiches, trying to do my best to put people on to the best tuna sandwiches in the area. And yeah, Dan Cable Presents. The podcast is available on all the things, wherever you find podcasts, on Apple and Spotify and all the things.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd like to put on while you're on here?
Just go see local music wherever you are. The best artists playing the best music might be just, playing in the small 100 cap club in your city. I can't encourage people enough to just go see live music. It always blows me away how many people show up to see the national headliners playing the big rooms around town, and they don't often show up to those local venues where amazing things are happening. Just in Portland, Oregon, we have Mississippi Studios, and the new Doug Fir Lounge is coming at us soon, and like those are two of the best venues that I've been to in this country after touring it with bands. So yeah,
hell yeah,
can't encourage people enough to just go support local music.
No, thank you. That was eloquent. I couldn't have said it better myself. No, I love that, and I fully agree. That goal for 2024 is to get out to more things as part of the show, because I do the show too much to be able to get out to all of them. So Jimmy's Jambox is coming to an event near you soon. All right, now we've got one last question to go. But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second. As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And again, one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary. Go ahead and click the link below. Go get some. With that being said, the final question. And this is entirely up to you.
All right.
This is your interpretation, however you feel. But what is an album that you feel kind of lives on more of the obscure side, but is one you think everybody should know?
Ooh, wow. That is a big question. I got turned on to this band called Wine Lips over this summer at this past Pickathon, which is an incredible music festival that happens out in Happy Valley, just outside of Portland. I
used to live in Happy Valley.
Unreal, magical experience. The best festival that I've ever been to are Pickathon music festivals, and they always put me on to what ends up being like some of my favorite bands going forward. And this past summer I saw this band from Toronto, Canada called Wine Lips. They are this punk psych rock band, and they have this record called Mushroom Sex Death Party that is one of my favorite albums, and they put on one of my favorite live shows that I saw this year. So I'm gonna go with Wine Lips, Mushroom Sex Death Party.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get up and out of here. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
today.
man. Thanks for having me. This has been super fun. Yeah. Appreciate you being willing to have me on the mics.
Hell yeah. All right, y'all. This has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Dan.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap.
This is not a podcast. This is a show.
Keep jamming.